Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. This is going to be our closeout podcast for the year 2022, heading into, God willing, a new year beginning on, well, literally Saturday at midnight, but going on into Sunday, starting the year 2023, where we will continue um, in the first week of the new year. But for 2022, this will be our final broadcast of the year. And we're going to take a look back at the year in politics, the things that we've discussed between the two various parties, and, why one is maybe stronger than the other for the country, why one is maybe weaker and or stronger for the country. So here we go. Okay, leading up to the midterms, we had a lot of things that were going on for this year. Coming into the year, of course, the Biden administration put out countless numbers of intelligence reports, briefings that, Russia was lining up along the border with Ukraine, ready to stage an invasion. The Ukrainians weren't sure. They didn't know if it was, you know, smoke and mirrors, for a lack of a better word. They just didn't have the intelligence that we had, and or the intelligence capabilities for what was going on inside the Russian borders. But nevertheless, the president, he put out intelligence briefings, and talked with the president of Ukraine on a regular basis. And lo and behold, in February, if I'm not mistaken, around February the 23rd, Russia began its invasion of Ukraine at the first of this year. Um, we dealt with, bouts of COVID trying to flare up and still rear its ugly head. Mass shootings in the country, in Uvalde, just the murdering of innocent school children. While the Texas tough law enforcement waited outside, stood by idly outside while school children got murdered. High prices at the pump, high grocery prices due to global pandemic snarls, supply chain shortages, lack of workers. There was, a number of reasons there that contributed to high inflation, high prices at the pump and at the checkout counter in this year, 2022, leading right up to the midterms, which came about in November of this year. Now, when we first began here at Soluble, we set out to explain to the American voters who may or may not have known, because the parties did switch. And in the days of Lincoln, and you often hear Republicans quote, as we said earlier in the year, that it's the party of Lincoln, but it was a totally different party back then. And we explained to you the switch. Strom Thurmond and Dixiecrats, they got real perturbed, upset that Harry Truman was getting ready to integrate the military, and that was the spurring moment, if you will, the starting point of them jumping ship and switching out parties. And so the Dixiecrats, you know, based on their anger at Truman for doing this, defected to the Republican Party. And so, the people who are Republicans, who I guess didn't want the tainted brand, or didn't want to be affiliated with that brand of politics, went over to the Democratic Party. And so there we are, from Lincoln being a Republican to Lincoln becoming a Democrat by way of racism, um, unwillingness to integrate. That's basically what it boils down to. Strom Thurmond integrating the military, and then these Dixiecrats led by Strom Thurmond knew that the dominoes would begin to fall thereafter. The military was just a starting point. Then it would be restaurants, hotels, schools, etc., etc. And so that's pretty much it. That's how the two parties switched. That's how the two parties switched and became Republican and Democrat that we have today, that we know of today. And so, there you have it. If you, didn't understand, you can do your own research, but it basically started as an integration of the military. And then, there was rumble jumble, if you will, and it was an abracadabra type thing where one party became the opposite party, and that opposing party went to the party that the opposing party originally left. I mean, it's kind of difficult there, but I try to simplify it as best I could. And there you have it. So we moving forward, we attempted to explain to the American people how, as staunch Democrats, and we say that unashamedly, as staunch Democrats, we went on to explain after that how states' rights really is a non-starter for the majority of Negroes in America. And that's what the Republican Party champions, and they have the right to have their platform and stand for what they stand for. And as American voters, we have the right to choose, to pick and choose. As just like the Dixiecrats had the right and the power to switch over, then so do we as American voters. So after the previous administration was voted out, we had a day that will live in infamy, January the 6th. And that was really the beginning of what spurred on the beginning of Soluble. Because we here at Soluble feel as if we can come on and explain to the American people the differences, the rights, the wrongs, the red flags, the positives, the negatives of where our politics is going in America. And we thank you for tuning in, and we're going to try to be informative, unbiased. Unlike Republicans, we won't stand for BS from the Democratic Party or from Democrat candidates that we champion to be office holders here in America. That's not what we'll do here at Soluble. We're going to call balls and strikes how we see them, regardless of the party affiliation. Now, to all my fellow Americans, but Negroes in particular, we have to understand that we have to get skin in the game if we really want to make America a better place to live for ourselves and our children going forward into the future. We should see now, since the Trump administration, that we have to get skin in the game. I mean, for example, when President Obama was in office, I would oftentimes hear from the African American community that he's doing nothing for us. Well, a news flash for you is that as soon as the president got in office, he lost the majority. He had nothing to work with. Mitch McConnell was vetoing him at every turn, and John Boehner was giving him fits at every turn. So you have to understand how the process works. And as I said, you really need to get some skin in the game if we're going to make changes, make preventative changes, be proactive in the system, so we're not always having to attack on the defensive. But that's how it stands. You can't, complain out of one side of your mouth that President Obama is not doing anything for Negroes in America. But at the same time, you won't go forward and vote, so he can have a majority in Congress. Just because we elected the first African American president, then all of a sudden he doesn't have a magic wand in his hand that no other president before him has had. That's not how it works. He's in office, but in order for him to pass legislation to get things done on behalf of not just Negroes in America, but all of America, and especially Negroes, he has to have a majority in Congress, which he didn't. So here at Soluble, we want to bring that to the forefront to give you clarity, to make you understand, to help you understand. But that's where it stands. You can't do anything without a 2/3 majority. That's the way the politics in this country works. So, all the complaints that Obama wasn't doing this or doing that, that's null and void if we're not going to the polls. As I said, we're in the low 90 something percentile of voting Democratic in this country. But when we don't exercise the right, when the time comes about, then it's useless. You're powerless. So, let's clean that up. As I said, going forward into 2023, if you really want to make change in this country and take the path of least resistance, because, Negroes in America, we see that since the Trump administration, that we can be taken back in America, or attempted to be taken back to a time where we were seriously oppressed. And the only way to avoid that, I mean, we're going to get where we're trying to get in this country by any means necessary. I understand that. But the path of least resistance right now is to rock the vote. That's the path of least resistance to get where we're trying to go. And that ought to be the path that we start off on as far as our by any means necessary process. We ought to start off with rocking the vote first. Now, of course, Republicans wonder, they question, why we lean so heavily Democratic, and we don't vote Republican. We have to let them understand, and we have to make sure that they understand. Just because I'm not voting heavily in favor of your party, or this country doesn't have a strong population of Negroes who vote Republican, how you're going to counter that as Republicans. And that's what we have to look at. And we ask ourselves as voters in America, Negroes in particular, if we don't vote for you, are you going to come out and make the case as to why we should? Or will you go about gerrymandering districts, realigning districts, changing voter laws to try to prevent us from voting? You have to understand that we're no longer asleep at the wheel. And going forward, we're going to expose that in 2023 with the Republican Party. They want the African American vote, but when they don't get it, they can't come out and make the case as to why we should switch. We should jump over. They just give us every reason to look at why we should continue to lean heavily Democrat. Because as I said, when they don't get our vote, they don't come out and make the case to prepare for the next election cycle, to make the case to us of what they have to offer us as a people, as a so-called minority. They just say that, well, okay, they're not voting for us. They didn't vote for us. Let's make it harder for them to vote. That's their answer thus far. And so, we're going to hold their feet to the fire going forward in 2023. At Soluble, we're not here, as I stated before, we're not here doing this for likes. We're not here doing it for retweets. We realize that this is, for one, the path to least resistance. This is the way to really gain power now. So this fight doesn't have to be kicked down the road. The can doesn't have to be kicked down the road when it comes to the fight for racial equality. We're going to have to go out and rock the vote. Like it or not, believe it or not. It's no time to be afraid. And if you're scared, say you're scared. Maybe someone can help you. Maybe, you can get that talk that you need, or that eye-opening experience that you need to have guts, have courage. Because, as I previously stated, this is for the future of our children that we're doing this, or that we should be doing it. So understand, to my fellow Democrats, Negroes in particular, you have to rock the vote. If you're going to wonder why, if you're going to complain, or to say that nothing has changed and nothing has changed, it's easy to say that and not vote. But going forward, here in the year 2023 and going forward, we here at Soluble intend to make the case that for Negro voters in America, the time for complaining is up. It's over. You're going to have to get in and be a part of the process. After, we elected President Obama as the first African-American president in this country. And, I heard it constantly from Negroes who had fear, seriously instilled in them. They're going to take him out. They're going to take him out. The man ran. Of course, he put his life on the line. So what more can we do? Are we any less? Do we? Surely, if a man with a name like Obama, and that's pressure in itself. That's pressure in itself to have that African name and running for political office, the highest office in the land, as a matter of fact. That's pressure. And if Barack can endure it, then surely we as American voters can take the path of least resistance and find a way to engage in the process. Because as I said, going forward in 2023, we intend to expose and come with a counter narrative that debunks and tax it in a way that we make it go away. There's no more complaining about racism, about discrimination, about being held back, because we've elected the first black president in this country now. So now we know that anything is possible. All things are possible for Negroes in America if we can achieve the highest office in the land. All things are possible now. And it won't happen, though, unless you become a part of the process, unless you get involved and play your part. And that part is, as you see, just like here in November and a special runoff in December. When you turn out and rock the vote, then you get what you want. Okay, now the midterms are over. We're heading into a new year. New legislative body makeup, new governing body makeup. But we can rest and relax now. I mean, we're comfortably ahead. The Republicans have barely eked out a victory in the House. Barely. I think by maybe 10 seats. By 10 measly seats. And it may not have been that if they would have did the opposition research before the election and exposed Santos, who we now see is just a seriously what looks like a pathological liar. And, you know, as I said before, last night, if he allowed about his accomplishments, where he went to school, who he worked for, his ancestry, what else will he fabricate? What else will he fabricate? So that's where we're at. We can rest now. They barely eked out a victory in the House, and they have a majority there. But we're still comfortably in control. Now, you know, we can sit back and take a wait and see approach. Let's see how they're going to govern before we have plenty of time to make up our minds going into the next election cycle. But, you know, in a sense, we can sit back and relax, but we have to tap into those ways now that ruffles feathers in Washington. The Democratic representatives that we've sent up to these seats to be office holders in these particular areas, we have to ruffle feathers if we feel the need to. And that's where we're at here at Soluble. We intend to really turn up the heat in 2023. All things political. There'll be no spinning. We're going to open up the invite room. We hope we'll get some guest appearances and get some serious debate and dialogue going on when it comes to American politics. But there will be no spinning. There will be no ducking the question or trying to change the subject. None of that. We're looking for solid answers, and we're going to hold all of our guest appearances, speakers, or whatever. We're going to hold their feet to the fire. And, you know, we realize that the only way we're going to get partisanship, our political leaders working across the aisles, as has been done for years, is to get involved and stay involved, to push, to poke, to prod. And, you know, our Democrats as well as Republicans, but Democrats in particular now, they can easily get comfortable when they get the job and start to renege or get relaxed on the things that they championed during the campaign. But you can change that now by, as I said, writing, calling, to make them realize that, okay, this is a different day and age in politics. But what we have done as Democratic voters, Negroes in particular, we have allowed the Republicans that we send to office, we have allowed them to get relaxed, take their eye off the ball, take their foot off the gas when it comes to things that we champion, things that we want to see get done in Washington that leads to a better life for us. They've been able to do that because they know that, or what they seem to think to this point is that, okay, they vote us in and then they go away. They don't stick around to see if we're going to actually do what we said on the campaign trail. So now you have the power to change that. You have the power to change that. And as I said, a Democratic president with no majority in the Senate or the House is, you know, he's kind of fighting with one hand behind his back, kind of trying to fight a fight for his fellow Democrats who put him in office with his hands tied. And you heard what, you know, the current President Biden said now before the midterm. If we don't get out and rock the vote, then he's not going to have time to be passing legislation for us. He's going to be using more time with the veto pen. And that was President Obama. That was the only defense he had. After 2010, he came in office in 2008 with a majority. By 2010, he had to break the veto pen out. That was the only defense he had. And so he couldn't get legislation on the books that we as Democratic voters may have wanted to see him get accomplished. So we have to, like I said, keep our eyes open. And we're going to keep skin in the game. We can't complain that nothing's getting done when we don't have a majority in the House and Senate. That's how it works, folks. I'm sorry to inform you. That's how it works. So we're going to have to vote. We're going to have to stay vigilant. And this is, in fact, the path to least resistance. This is the path to your power. Do you know that as Democratic voters, when you vote in the majority and you send these legislators up to the Hill and to the Oval Office, you control the military. You control the police force. You control these agencies in America where there may try to be discrimination in housing, discrimination in the job market. You control all of that with one simple vote from each and every eligible voting American. That's one of the reasons why they say that all politics are local. You control that. Any office that can be held in America that has to have a vote in order for you to hold that office, you, the American people, the American voter, Negroes in particular, you control that. So if you don't exercise the authority that you have to be able to have control, more control over your life, more control over righting the wrongs that you may experience in your everyday life. If you don't use your power, then you can expect it. You can expect the attack to go against you. And you can more than likely expect that you're going to face defeat when the attack is all said and done. It's your weapon. You don't go out in the woods bear hunting with the semi-automatic weapon. And then when you spot a bear and he spots you and he's thinking about charging, you're going to fight him without using the assault rifle. You're going to lay the assault rifle down, which is your weapon to victory. Which is your weapon to victory over this angry, hungry, agitated bear, so to speak. You mean to tell me you're going to lay your assault weapon down and take on this gigantic creature that's maybe 10, 20 times stronger than you without the assault rifle? It's suicide. So the same thing relates and translates to the vote. It's your power. Use it. And if you don't use it, you will be defeated. And if you don't use it and you are being defeated, you can no longer complain. We here at Soluble, we intend to 100% hold all Democratic voters, Negroes in particular. We intend to hold your feet to the fire. And that's our stance going forward into 2023. If you're not going to vote, if you're not going to take this path of least resistance and play your part, that helps all of your fellow Americans, then we don't want to hear complaints. We don't want to hear groanings and murmurings. And the glass is always half empty type mentality. Everything is negative. A Debbie Downer when it comes to your life and the life of Negroes in general in America, because we all don't feel like that. Those of us who are participating in the process, we know that the power for change lies in the vote, because that's the system that we live in. That's the country and the system that we live in. Now, if we didn't have that, we would have no power. It would be a leader in office, say like North Korea, for example. It'd just be a leader in office, say like Kim Jong-un is there, where his father just left. Here in America, we have greater rights. We have more freedoms, and we should exercise them. Can you imagine a Donald Trump being in office as president, and then he serves and serves and serves with no term limits, and then as soon as he's done on his deathbed, he appoints for his successor, none other than Don Jr. Then you have no choice. You're under constant oppression, tyranny, authoritarianism. You're constantly faced with threats, threats on your life, threats on your well-being, your family members. This is what goes on in other countries. You can be killed for simply speaking out or for having a differing opinion. But we live in the great country of America, and your weapon is the vote. So if you don't use it, you get gobbled up. You get left by the wayside. Your complaints, your complaints are pretty much falling on deaf ears. So, going forward, and it's been noted, we don't have the facts here with us, we don't have the figures right here in front of us, but it's been duly noted that historically the economy in America does better under Democratic leadership in Washington. This is one of the things that we informed you on this past year, and this is where we made our case. You know, with the Republicans, it seems to always be something. Like, we just got rid of the clown show that was Herschel Walker. And now up pops George Santos. Now, the minority leader right now can speak out against it, even though there's no law on the books that right now can currently keep him from being sworn in. He's still being investigated. Maybe he's committed financial fraud or financial misleadings on some of his statements that could possibly lead to charges. But as I said, with the Republicans, it's always something. We put down Herschel Walker, a wholly unqualified candidate who never should have been on the ballot. This was something out of Trumpism, and we see what happened with Trump himself, where we took an inexperienced politician, a man who never governed over other people's lives, never had held any positions in government, and we put him in the Oval Office, and we seen the disaster there. So that prevented Herschel from holding the Senate seat, because everybody realized that this was Donald Trump all over again. No experience, a lack of understanding, don't got a clue as to what's going on. And the American people, even the Republicans, were fed up with it. I mean, of course, he only lost by 2 percentage points. That speaks a lot to Georgia Republicans, and that's their style. That's just one out of their playbook. It doesn't matter if they got somebody in there that's wholly unqualified, as long as they can find somebody to be that person's brain, like they did with George W. Bush and Karl Rove. That's their style. That's straight out of the Republican playbook. But as soon as we got done with that, and we thought we could take a sigh of relief and now get to the business of governing for the American people, up steps Representative-elect Santos. So now it's like, hold up, let's see how this year is going to go down. Let's see how this is going to be handled. And don't get me wrong, we here at Soluble stand for what's best for the country. And the infighting, the bickering that we see going on inside the Republican Party right now is not good for the country. Even though we're not Republicans, we're not going to, stand on the opposing sideline and cheer at the turmoil, the disarray, the dysfunction going on inside the Republican Party right now, where there's being a challenge to the speakership. It's not a foregone conclusion that Minority Leader McCarthy is going to suddenly become the majority leader next week. It's not a foregone conclusion. But as I said, these internal bickerings, they serve no purpose when it comes to doing what's best for the American people. And as far as a governing body, making decisions to make people's lives better. We got too much going on in the world, in the country itself, to have our political leaders who can't go behind closed doors in a place of their choosing as a party and get it together and come out and roll their sleeves up and get ready to do the business of the American people. And, that's what we gave you this year. Looking back, the dysfunction in the Republican Party, the scandals, with Reagan, we had Iran-Contra. With Bush 1, we went and took away on backroom deals more than the fact that, Saddam was directly threatening us. It was a war of choice. It wasn't a war like in World War II when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Then America had no other choice. They were pushed into a corner to the point where they had to come out swinging, or they wasn't going to be taken serious as a country. It was going to be looked at as a weakness, and other countries would think that, well, we could bomb America, we could bomb their military bases or whatever, and there's nothing going to be done. So they had to do it. They had to. The World War II, the American troops had to go to the battlefield. But Kuwait, Bush won. That was a choice. We had September 11th, and with Bush too, going back into Iraq again a second time was a choice. So you always, with the Republican Party, it's always something that seems to be going on to make the American people sit on edge, to hold their breath, to hope that there's not going to be a terrible fallout that affects us all as Americans. That's our opinion here at Soluble. And if there's an opposing point of view, we welcome it. We welcome that opposing point of view. We're open for the discussion. We're open for the debate to do whatever it takes to bring both of these parties together, to govern in a bipartisanship way. We know that the majority rules in the country. That's the way it's been since the beginning of time. Of course, there's going to be pushback. Of course, there are going to be sour grapes on behalf of some of the members of the losing opposing party. We get that. We understand that. That's a democracy. But at the end of the day, we work across the aisles. We reach a compromise and we get things done. And that's where we're trying to get things in America, to bring them back to that place of compromise, of bipartisanship, of working together across the aisles. I mean, when there's a Republican in charge, they can't be doing all things bad, and all things that they're doing are going to be harmful to the country. So in those instances where Democrats feel like they can reach across the aisles and work with them, they should. But of course, there are things that the Democrats champion that they're going to have to stand firm on, and we get that. There are things that the Republicans stand firm for that they're not going to budge on. We get that. But at the end of the day, in most cases, we find a happy medium and a way to compromise and get things done across the aisle. So with this political year in review, as I said, this was an election year. We just had the midterm vote. And from what was preached on the campaign trail about the doom and gloom, all the doom and gloom, all the negative things that was facing America or that's going to be facing America. What's happened? The country is still rolling on, stronger than ever, with a system of checks and balances. Unlike the previous administration that tried to disrupt the system of checks and balances, try to just take the whole system and just flip it upside down on its head. And it caused a serious social disruption in America. The election is come and gone. The issues are still there. We still have a lot of work to do. And we intend to look forward to coming into the new year, continuing to be informative, to bring you, the daily, weekly, monthly, what have you, happenings of all things political going on in America. And, we still have a lot of work to do. There's no time to rest on our laurels now. But the work is not tiresome. It's not a weary journey. It's just the work of staying informed, keeping your eyes open as to what's going on in politics, what the opposing party is trying to do that is negative, working against you, what the opposing party is trying to do that's positive, working for you. All things. Keeping yourself informed of all things. That's what we intend to do here at Soluble. But those are the facts of the matter. And the Republican Party has to understand, as I said, when we vote Negro voters in particular, when we heavily vote Democratic, the Republicans never come out after the election and before the next election cycle to make the case to us as to why we should vote Republican. So we have to start asking ourselves, do Republicans have a problem, sitting down with Negro voters in America face to face and being honest about what their intentions are? Can they see that? Can they realize that Negro voters in America are very well aware of what the term states' rights means, what it refers back to? Can they sit down with Negro voters in America and assure us that that's not what it is, and give us a new sense of direction for this party to make the case? Now, as we stated in this past year, they're not a racist party. To let them tell it, they're not a racist party. But for the last 50 years, we haven't seen a minority on the ticket when it comes to vice president or president. We haven't seen it. With the Democratic Party, we've delivered it. We've delivered it. And I've just explained to you minutes here before why it seems as if, the first African-American president in American history could get nothing done. I just explained that to you. But we did put him in the office. And we just took our eyes off the prize, so to speak, when it comes to giving him a majority. But what have the Republicans done for them not to be a racist party? They're not a racist party, and the best that they can give us are put up for a seat in front of our eyes. The best that they can do is Herschel Walker, which represents the worst of us. The uninformed, unqualified, unintelligent when it comes to being a senator. Not unintelligent in general, but in the field of qualifications of what it takes to be a United States senator, unintelligent. And this is the best that they can give us. If the Republican Party is not a racist party, if it's ready to look at the American Negro as an equal, then they wouldn't put forth this type of candidate to run for office. And Negroes in America have to understand that. Are we supposed to walk around with egg on our face for the next, 4 to 6 years or however long the Senate term goes until Herschel is up for re-election? That's what they would like us to do. And that shows you how warped and twisted they are. So we have to keep our eyes on the prize, and that's another reason why we have to stay vigilant. We will walk around with egg on our face for the next 4 to 6 years or however long that Herschel was to hold this seat if he was elected. And meanwhile, they're smirking, smiling, making jokes, mocking behind the scenes. It's a joke. It's a joke. And, as I said before, we lost a few percentage points when it comes to the turnout in this past midterm election. But to the American Negro who defected to the Republican side, what are you getting now? What is your party going to do about Santos? Before the midterms, it was high gas prices, high grocery prices. Oh, inflation. Joe Biden is terrible for America. And it didn't work. It didn't. Those lies, that fear mongering, it didn't produce the red wave that they had hoped for. That fear mongering that they have been able to use in past elections that has produced a red wave. This time, the American people didn't go for it. So, to my fellow Negro voters in America that defected and leaned heavily Republican this time around, what are you getting here? Maybe you can come on. We look forward to you coming on next year. Some of our Negro Republican voters to explain to us what you're getting here. What is the benefit? Because now the election is over. The midterms are over. And all of a sudden, it's not high prices here, inflation there, out of control spending on Ukraine there. It's investigations. They're concerned about subpoena power. For what? For who? Where's the threat? Now we're going to a period of more wasting of the American taxpayers' money because the Republicans feel like that's what America voted for in their warped and twisted minds. A lot of them, like this candidate Santos, they can't get out of their heads that America is not entrenched in Trumpism anymore. They tried it. They didn't like it. But a lot of the Republican politicians don't seem to understand that. They haven't been able to grasp that. Donald Trump is so far deeply inside their heads, inside their brains, that they just can't see their way around it. It's like a fog, and they can't think clearly. But the American people have surely moved on, which is what the vote reflects. Which is what the vote reflects. But here you have these candidates, these people running for office that feel as if that's still the way it goes until we show them otherwise. Until we show them otherwise. So, we're closing out the year. As I said, this will be the last podcast. Now, from the time we first came on earlier this year, sometime March, from then to now, where we're closing out the year, the midterms have come and gone. Then there's still things going on with the Republican Party that makes us here at Soluble wonder or feel like, we have to be here because we don't know if they're going to put party over country still, as they did with the former administration. A real serious threat to the Republic, the former president and his cronies and his acolytes. A real serious threat, but never an investigation, never a need to investigate, never a need to impeach. Had they impeached him after January 6th, he wouldn't be able to announce a third run for president. But that's where it's at. And they want us to respect him as leaders. They can't impeach him the second time around, but on his announcement for a third run for president, you don't see none of them in the crowd. What should that tell us as American voters when it comes to the backbone of Republican politicians in this country? That they can't stand up to a rogue leader and denounce him for whatever he may be guilty of. Misogyny, corruption, undermining our institutional norms. But they never had the backbone to stand up to it. And yet, and still, there are Republican politicians who feel as if, they should still be qualified to hold office based on that lack of an effort to stand up and defend the Constitution and defend the Republic from a rogue leader. So here we are, we're heading into a new year. And and that's what this past year has been. The war in Ukraine, high prices at the pump, at the grocery store, COVID still spiking. We're still dealing with it in some places where we still have several hundred Americans right now today that's dying. That's dying daily from COVID. So it's still reared its ugly head, and we've had people like Senator Paul, Rand Paul challenging Dr. Fauci, trying to denounce him as a fraud. With Republican, it's simply that they're mad because they don't want anything to happen that weakens the economy. What that boils down to is money. Because that's all their lobbyist friends. That's all their supporters. That's their donors screaming at them. What are you going to do about this? I'm losing money. And so therefore they come out and attack the process. They attack the people. When Dr. Fauci has did nothing but honorable work. Nothing but honorable work all his life since he served in government. Nothing but honorable work. Now all of a sudden, he's the scapegoat. He's the bad guy. He's the reason we're having all these COVID problems. And he's just like some of the other leading scientists, some of the best scientific minds out there were trying to get to the bottom and the root of this COVID thing, the origin of it, the best way to prevent it. They rolled up their sleeves and did the best they could. But that's what we had in this past year. The attacking of Dr. Fauci, the attacking of all things normal by a party, a political group, a political ideologue that claims to love this country. The president's taking classified documents, violating the emoluments clause. He got shady deals going on over here. He don't want to show his taxes over there. Nothing. No investigation. No need to make an uproar about it. And so it's time to, hold these hypocrites' feet to the fire. And it doesn't matter whether they have a D affiliation or R affiliation by their name. It's time to hold their feet to the fire and let them see that we, the American people, we are woke. And as I've said before, woke is a good thing. Woke is a good thing. To be alert, to have knowledge as to what's going on. So people can no longer pull the wool over your eyes or subject you to oppressive treatment or discriminatory treatment. Woke is a good thing. So that's pretty much, the political year in review. The war in Ukraine, high prices, school shootings, all these things we're going to continue to discuss, continue to take a serious look at going into 2024. Because at the end of the day, we're all about solving. We're all about solving. We're not here to stir up controversy, to muddy the waters with false accusations, to come up with some kind of a imaginary group that nobody knows of, kind of like a QAnon, to start spewing all kind of misinformation, lies, to get the American people all confused, not knowing which way to turn, looking for answers in every direction and not finding no comfort in the answers for the answers that they are seeking. We here at Soluble intend to calm things down by telling the truth, by calling it like we see it, calling it like it is. We here at Soluble, we haven't went looking for a representative-elect Santos. We haven't went on a fact-finding mission to dig up dirt. It's what he's brought to us, the American people. And this is, once again, the good thing about the system that we live in. We have open records. We have access to information that lets us know if our political leaders or people running for office are not being on the up and up. And this says a lot about Representative-elect Santos. Because, as I said, if he'll lie about these things, what else will he lie about? He hasn't been a financial consultant, financial advisor, worked in the, the banking industry or whatever for Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, Merrill Lynch, or whatever. So where is he getting his money from? Where is he getting these $700,000 from? Word on the street is that there's a foreign country that was investigating him, or he was wanted in that country for embezzlement. So this is the reason why it's important that we all stay alert. We all stay involved. And when it comes time to vote, rock it. Knock it out the park. And we're going to give you all those reasons, going forward into the new year. We're going to give you examples of how we as Americans, we participate on an annual basis in events, celebrations, holidays in this country. And give you all the reason why you should do the same thing on a regular basis when it comes to the vote going forward into the new year. So that's it for the political year in review. We voted out more remnants of Trumpism, but believe it or not, it's still alive. It may not be well, but it's still alive. And what we have to do as American voters to keep it at bay, to make sure that we don't go back to a time where we had the worst administration, the most dangerous administration in American political history. We don't want to go back to those times. So Thus, we're here to make sure that the American people don't forget, to be a constant reminder, if you will, as to how things can turn so rogue right and begin to turn the lives of everyday American people upside down. So, in conclusion, we thank you for those who have came on this year and lend us an ear. To take time to listen to what we stand for, what we're trying to bring to the forefront on a regular basis. And we hope that you will continue to engage, tune in, bring ideas to the table, because we all have a stake in America's future. We all have a stake in America's future. Whether we're Republicans or Democrats, we should want what's best for all of us as human beings, regardless of party affiliation. And that's soluble stance. We try to get at the truth to right the wrongs, because these wrongs hurt people. And we here at Soluble, we're humanitarians. We don't like to see people hurt. We like to see the people doing good. We like to see people happy. So therefore, it starts at the top with politics. And because these lawmakers have the everyday power to make your life a living hell or a living heaven here in America. Once again, we're here because we realize now that these politicians have the power to make your life as average everyday Americans a living hell or a living heaven. And thus we're here to bring out all the facts and let you choose, because I think just like us here at Soluble, most Americans want a little piece of the American heavenly pie, not hell. So therefore we've came. So that's going to do it for the political year in review for the year 2022. We close out tonight the final broadcast, and as I said, we thank you. We hope you will continue to listen. We plan to be as much as an informative outlet for you, just as much as your major broadcast stations on your local cable or streaming services. All things that are politically relevant, we will discuss here at Soluble. Going into the new year, we will bring back Issue Day. We did not in the closing months of this year, we didn't do Issue Day because right before the midterms, during the midterms, and after, we were consumed with doing reporting on what was going on with politics, what was going on with the elections that was being held, who was winning, who was losing, and just what we thought about politicians on an individual basis. And so we dropped the Issue Day for that brief time in America, in our politics, during the midterm. But we do have all intentions of bringing it back this coming year, and we're going to open up the information lines. If there's something that you want to have discussed, or there's an issue that you want us to approach, to debate, to bring up on this podcast, we'll be glad to do so. We're looking for a solution, and there's no better way to find that, and be able to rest at ease unless we tell the truth. We have to tell it like it is in order to get to the political solution. So whether it's Democrat or Republican, that's what we intend to do. That's what we intend to do. We intend to push more, if you will. Once again, we here at Soluble, we intend to push more on our Democratic leaders, because those are the ones that we put in office. Those are the ones that we have working for us. The Democratic Party, the party of the middle class working American. That's our party. And we would defend them when they're right. we intend to hold their feet to the fire when they're wrong. Unlike the opposing party is doing thus far. When things are going wrong, lies are being told, they're looking the other way. They're ducking the issue. They really don't want to be bothered with it. And in closing, here's the bottom line. Of course, Republicans are against Democratic politics. Politics from the left is an opposing view to Republicans. We get that. But here's where it goes off the rails. The Republican Party wants to demonize Democrats, and they want to create a narrative in the minds of the American voters that the Democrats are destroying the country. Just because you don't agree with the Democratic Party doesn't mean you have to go out and demonize and start a false campaign of lies that everything the Democrats are doing is going to be for the downfall of the country. Simply because, and this is a true statement, and this will help us to be able to discuss things to bring about a solution. Simply because the Democrats are for the whole melting pot, whereas the Republican Party is for Caucasians in America first. And then if there's anything left over, any scraps or whatever, then, y'all have at it. And good luck with getting what you need out of that we gave, those leftovers we gave you, after we as Caucasians have been satisfied in every way. And that's the total difference. That's the total difference. And it's okay if, the Republican Party is for Caucasian first, and then good with any other race, good luck. That's okay. But you don't have to demonize or, use scare tactics, tell lies, stir up anger that the opposing party is destroying the country because they're doing things different than the way you would do them. So let that sink in going into the year 2023, because that's where it's at. The Democrats are for the whole melting pot. Immigrants, people who were born here, Negroes, Hispanics, you name it. They're here for the whole melting pot as to what the Constitution guarantees. As for what we as a nation of immigrants stand for. They haven't changed. They're sticking to it. They're trying to follow it to the written letter of the law, to the written letter of the Constitution. And that by no means signifies that they're destroying America, simply by following the instructions on the founding documents. So, like I said, let that sink in closing, because that's where it's at. That's where it's at. The Democrats, the Republicans have stirred up anger, resentment. There's resorted to violence, threats of violence, simply because they don't like the opposing party's politics. And that's fine. But to twist it and turn it into a narrative where they're destroying the country and you're going to lose your country if you don't stand up to Democrats, nothing can be further than the truth. It's just that they're for the whole melting pot. And racist Republicans fear that, now it's coming to a time where the playing field is going to have to be level. It can't be tilted, towards Caucasians, and it run down here from there to every other ethnic group in America. And that's where it's at. And that fear has caused them to be ready to resort to violence, to talk about succession. And so, going forward, we're going to challenge them in every way. We're going to hold their feet to the fire in every misstatement, on all misinformation. We're not going to let alternative facts happen. We're not going to accept them. We're not going to accept that everything that comes in the form of investigation, or looking into corrupt activities. We're not going to accept that as a witch hunt or as a hoax. You've never seen this before from any American president that was under investigation. They never tried to tear down the institutions that were investigating them. And why would you have to do that if you know you're innocent? But at the same time, no one's above the law. So if you've done something wrong, you're going to be investigated. And because no one is above the law, you're going to be held to an account. And the former president tried to destroy all of that. And the Republican Party stood idly by and appeared to let him, make his best attempt at doing so. But never to fear. Soluble is here. And that's, what we stand for. Exposing corruption, exposing lies, and telling it like it is, so that the American people can have a clear vision of who and or what they're voting for. And that's what we stand for here at Soluble, and that's what we'll continue to bring to you, God willing, in the years to come. So with that being said, we're signing off for the year 2022. We thank all of our viewers. We thank all of those who've tuned in for this our first year of podcasting. We hope we've been able to shed light on anything where you were in the dark when it comes to politics. And we're going to be here going forward into the new year for any questions you may have that we can bring you more into the light where you're in darkness. And that's what we're standing for. Because if it's a problem in American politics, before we go down that path of destruction of destroying the republic and the democracy that we enjoy today, we feel like we could bring it to the forefront here for a discussion and debate, and at the end of the day have a solution waiting for the American people. So with that being said, we're going to close. We thank you for joining us tonight. We hope that the new year coming in brings you happiness, prosperity, and making America a better place to live for all those involved. That's our goal here at Soluble. So we thank you for joining us tonight. We wish you a happy new year, and we look forward to continuing our political discussions going into the year 2023. Happy New Year to all. God bless and good night. This is Soluble signing off for the year 2022. Thank you.